What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the first college basketball betting preview. I'm Stucky, and joining me, as they will all season, are my co-hosts, BJ Cunningham and Mike Calabrese. Gentlemen, are you ready to talk college hoops? BJ, I'll start with you. You ready to get this going?
Yeah, college football's over. We're nearing the NFL playoffs. So, now that we have so many college basketball teams, it seems like every Saturday and Sunday is just an absolute war with 150 to 160 games in a weekend. But this is a really, really fun time of year, trying to shake out this entire national landscape before we actually get to March, and then when all chaos ensues.
Yeah, we're recording this on a Monday afternoon just to give everyone a heads up. We usually will record Monday morning, release it early afternoon for the Monday night slate, but it's a holiday, really kind of a March feel right now. We have college basketball on during the day. So it's good to do this first episode of the season right now. But normal week will be Monday, early afternoon episode release. The guys from Three Man Weave will do the midweek episode. And then, of course, we'll be back on Friday to preview the weekend, as always, all the way through the tournament. And then we'll have our myself and guys from the Three Man Weave will have a live show on Saturday mornings for Big Bets on Campus Live coming up probably in a couple Saturdays from now, starting that throughout the tournament. So stay tuned for updates there. Mike, how's it going? You excited to get this rolling and find some winners and some futures and just college basketball's in full season?
It is a great opportunity to welcome in kind of a broader audience because a lot of folks have just now started to pay attention to college basketball. And there's always that fear, oh, the season's halfway over. I must be so far behind. No, not really. We don't really know what's going on from, the top of the board perspective. The AP top 10 has been a revolving door. You got teams like Xavier now, all of a sudden 8th in the country. I think if you told people that preseason, that'd be pretty shocking. And then honestly, for me, the only team that I feel 100% confident getting to the second weekend in the entire country is Houston, just because their defense is so good and it travels so well, and they're not going to be tested for the rest of their conference play. So they basically are cruising to a number one seed. Outside of that, everything is truly fluid. And I think it pays to do your homework on a week-to-week basis and try to get a feel for these teams as they get more into conference play. And also, we'll touch on this a little bit later in the show, but there's some teams that are moving their way up, the Clemsons of the world, but they're doing almost all of their best work at home. And as we know, during conference play, tournament play, I should say, as well as March Madness, you got to be able to win games on the road. So just a lot of fool's gold being produced at this point in the season. So I'm really excited to pick your brain and BJ's brain as we move through the season.
Yeah, we'll start high level today, just as the introductory pod. We'll talk about key takeaways from the whole season, then this weekend. And then we'll also get into what futures we have. And then we'll talk a little Kansas State tomorrow, and then our best bets for tomorrow night. And yeah, I guess let's just start high level first. The biggest takeaway to me, and you kind of touched on this, and I think it's going to make for an amazing tournament, is who do you trust? There's no elite team that's head and shoulders above the rest, right? And the blue bloods, right? Like the North Carolina, are they just in cruise control like they were last year because they know how good they are, but they've been disappointing. Duke, I know Kentucky won at Tennessee, but man, they're losing as 20-point favorites. So it is wide open landscape. And I'll say a key takeaway for me from the season, and I guess from this weekend too, who do you trust? One of those teams, and I agree, Houston, just their defense, their experience, their coaching, one of those teams that, one of the few that I'll just pencil in to the second weekend. Is rising up to that level now, who actually beat Houston, is Alabama. I mean, man, number one, the talent that they have and what they did to LSU, just a complete evisceration. But having a guy like Sears, who just is so in control, knows when to take the big shots. He's that veteran presence on a team with uber talent and depth. And man, Alabama is scary. They are real. They're ascending into like, oh, I trust this team, just what they're doing on a nightly basis. So that's kind of my biggest takeaway so far from this wide open, awesome year. It's going to make for a great tournament. BJ, I'll go to you. If you want to go either overall, high level this weekend, or both, what a key takeaway that you want to bring up here?
Yeah, my big takeaway from the weekend was kind of going along your lines with how good Alabama is. Not only, I think, we have the fast-paced offense, we have them, scoring 106 points against LSU, but they're a top 10 Ken Palm defensive team now. So
Yep.
I agree with you. They're a very, very dangerous team. And it looks like they should probably be the favorites to win the SEC right now with Tennessee going down to Kentucky. But my one biggest takeaway from the entire season is just how stacked the Big 12 is right now. We have
Crazy.
9 of the 10 teams are currently inside the Ken Palm top 40. And every single week and weekend, it seems like there are 2 or 3 top 25 showdowns. Kansas is currently 5-0 in conference play with 4 wins by 4 points or less. Flip side of the coin, West Virginia is 0-5 with 4 losses by 7 points or less, which just shows you how much depth there is in this conference. And once we get to March, one of these mid-level teams who maybe finishes 500, maybe a little over 500 in the Big 12 is going to be an 8 or a 9 seed. And they're going to be very, very dangerous, potentially taking out a 1 or a 2 seed. And I was curious, I'm going to give you guys a quick trivia question here. The most bids ever for a single league to the NCAA tournament is 11. Can you guys name what conference that is, and bonus what year it was?
I'll guess
first, Mike?
Big East Conference, and I'll
Correct.
say
that is correct. 2011. Big East.
Oh, you weren't even allowed to guess?
I was gonna say
sorry.
2010. I was gonna say 2010 to be totally
The
honest.
worst-
Here we go. It was
The
close.
worst trivia host ever, but great
They're
call
like,
there.
bang, you got it wrong. Sorry about that.
Yeah, Big East 2011.
Yeah, I mean, look.
Yeah, it's crazy just how
Texas
much,
Tech is 0-5 and West Virginia 0-5, and like they're in the basement, and those are really good. Like those are tournament quality teams.
Texas Tech just lost in Austin by 2 to Texas. I know it was kind of out of hand and they were fouling a ton at the end, but still, it's crazy.
Yeah, we're gonna talk a lot about the Big 12 fast, and I agree that you get in from, you're gonna be an undervalued like 12 seed, the last team in from the Big 12. You're battle tested for 3 months. I mean, there's no break. But yeah, and just to add on to Alabama, because they're young and the win at Houston, they were behind, young team playing a team that had revenge from last year. They wanted that game. That experience, to me, that was probably the most impressive win of the season so far, is that Alabama win at Houston, coming back in the way that they did. And a hostile environment, amazing win. Mike, what do you want to touch on high level just from either this weekend or the whole season?
So I'm not saying it's over yet, but I'm a little bit disappointed in the mid-major crop, because with a year that's as topsy-turvy at the top of the AP poll, I was hoping that we'd have some more teams. I mean, obviously right now we have Charleston and FAU just cracked the top 25. But when you look at these teams, it's hard to get really excited about a deep run. I know that Charleston bombs away from 3, but they're outside the top 200 in terms of 3-point shooting percentage. Then you got St. Mary's, who've been reeling off, tons of wins, but they've lost all of their close games to good teams. They lost to Houston, New Mexico, Washington, Colorado State, all by less than 5 points. So you could view that as they're right there on the cusp, or you could say they can't get it done against, quad 1 teams. And then, just trying to talk myself into some of these other mid-majors. UC Santa Barbara, I love Pasternak a lot. I mean, they finished top 2 in the Big West 4 of the last 5 years. They play slower, so I like that contrast. They're good on defense, but I'm just looking for somebody that I can hang my hat on that can be my darling going into March, and I haven't found him yet. And then you pair that with, the sad injury to Jelly Walker. There's just like a lot of teams that are they're just like a piece away from really talking yourself into them at this point. So maybe that'll change in the next month. Obviously, there's plenty of meaningful games to be played at the second half of January and February. But as it stands right now, I don't necessarily have a team that I'm fired up to, put to the Sweet 16 as soon as that bracket comes out.
Yeah, I'm also hunting for who my darling is going to be. Someone will emerge. There might be a team or two. And as we're talking, I was bringing up to you guys right like 10 minutes ago. I wanted Michigan State second half. They're down like 8-10. Well, they're down 2 now, so that's not going to be a bad. We're going to talk about the Big Ten coming up. Let's transition into, actually before we get into what futures we have. Let's do a quick rant. I'm going to open this up. It could be rant of the weekend, or it could be the whole season, since it's the first episode. I'm going to rant about a team that has cost me, I think, more money than any team this year, is Wyoming. And don't do this, people, but I know that, I had a big Saturday, and I know that people that are following me are going to either, if they're down, they're going to bet a lot on the late game, starts at 11 o'clock, or they're going to try to double up. Don't do that. It's one game. But I know that people are going to do it. So I always watch the late game with more interest, knowing that people are going to chase and do dumb betting things. And Wyoming, desperation effort, playing Boise State, who doesn't miss a shot. it was just a lot. I mean, I know that they've been missing guys, and I really like their coach, but it was just a lackadaisical effort, in my opinion, for a team at home, tough place to play, just desperate. Like don't have a win yet in the Mountain West. Playing Boise off that UNLV win is a great spot, and just dud. I mean, it was Boise from the get-go. I know Maldonado had like a broken nose. I mean, had a nosebleed that cost him the first 5 minutes, second half, but anyone can figure out Wyoming. I should just fade them maybe, but let me know. That's my rant is, well, I mean, you let me down. You didn't even give us hope in the late night spot. BJ, let me go to you. Any rant of the year or weekend?
Yeah, it's, I wasn't on this, but I'm going to rant for anybody who did have it. Have you guys seen what's been going on with UC San Diego the last few games? They had, I think,
the
maybe
worst beat in the history of college basketball.
So worst beat ever. Not only did what happened essentially is they were plus 3.5 against UC Riverside. UC Riverside made a free throw to go up 3 with 2 seconds left.
But they were also up like 13.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. They were up 14 with 7 minutes left to play. They completely collapsed. Then with 2 seconds left, they just inexplicably just threw the ball right to the UC Riverside guy. And instead of just holding on to it, winning by 3,
1 second. There's 1 second left.
1 second, just jacks up a 3 and hits it, and they win by 6. But the very next game on Saturday, they played Cal State Bakersfield. Again, they had a 13-point lead with 10 minutes left to go. They were plus 3 again, and they turned the ball over twice in the final minute when they were essentially down 2, fouled on a breakaway when they didn't need to. And, Bakersfield goes line, makes 1 of 2, goes up and wins by 4. We're recording this obviously on Monday. They play tonight, and they are plus 3 plus 3.5 against UC Davis, which is just hilarious. But yeah. And that's the thing is now that since we have so many teams in college basketball, these type of things just tend to happen. But I have never seen anything like to just throw it right to the guy and just jack up a meaningless 3. I think that might have been the worst beat. Will be
the only
the season.
I think definitely the season. The only one that I can come up with that's touches it. Back in 2007, Dan Dockich was coaching Bowling Green, and they were plus 6.5 at Buffalo. Buffalo is down 2 with the ball. They throw up an air ball. Bowling Green, hands up, run to the locker, and we won. The refs went and they reviewed. They're at the monitor, and they say there should be 0.1 second left when it was an airball shot and it hit the out of bounds line. This is 10 minutes later. Apparently, the sportsbooks in Vegas paid out the plus 6.5. The refs say, we got to finish this 0.1 second. Bowling Green's in the showers. They have to come out of the showers. They assess them a technical for leaving the court.
Oh my
Buffalo
God.
makes both free throws and wins by 8 in overtime and covers 6.5.
Oh my God.
Absolute
That's
insanity.
okay. That is the worst that I've ever heard.
Yeah.
In my entire life.
But
Wow.
that outside of that, there's a couple other like bench technicals, I think, with an Iona game once, but that was up there. So yeah, great call out there. Will probably be at the end of the year one of the worst beats in any sport of the entire season. Mike, what do you got for rant, or do you want to get anything off your chest?
Well, quickly, one of the worst bad beats I ever experienced. I think I blacked it out so badly. I can't even remember the team I bet on. I just know that they were playing New Mexico State, and New Mexico State had a promotion where all their fans dressed up in pajamas and did a pillow fight at mid-court at halftime. And there was this big fat guy who fell on the court, and apparently he greased it up a little bit. My point guard, first possession of the second half, turns his ankle, out of the game, and then it was a runaway after that. And I only knew it because the ESPN3 telecast, they showed that there was like all this mayhem on the court at halftime, and maybe that's what screwed things up. So that is always fresh in my mind. In terms of rant, that's a little bit more topical. At this point, I still think the AP voters are scared to put in these mid-majors who, in my opinion, have proven that they're quality teams, and they want to leave a team like Arkansas in the top 25. Arkansas without Nick Smith Jr., they're not a top 25 team, period. And I would
can't shoot. This team, they make like 2 threes a game.
But like, I understand that it can be a bridge too far for the voters to drop them. What were they, 14th in the AP poll last week? It's like, just have some guts and put in a team like New Mexico. Jalen House going from a high major down to New Mexico, he's turned into an absolute star. They beat San Diego.
I love him. He plays every play. Like, right. I've always loved him. He plays every play like it's the last play of the season. He's amazing. And yeah, they're legit.
I wanted to see them reward them in the same way they rewarded Florida Atlantic for this great season they're putting together and putting them in the top 25. But at this point, that's nitpicking a little bit, but that's as far as I'll go in terms of a rant at this point in the season.
Yep. By the way, this is, I mentioned 3-Man Weave as our midweek episode. Someone sent me this shirt, an anonymous package.
Oh no.
3-Man Weave with
For those who are not watching, it's got a 3-man weave with a nice circle and cross through it.
I don't know who would have known my address to send this. I thought it was like a Grateful Keg thing. Keg would have done. He said, nope, I wish I did. I wish it was my bit. He didn't. I don't know who sent this. Is it like I was just joking with Jim Root. I was like, this is gonna like the start of a Dateline episode. You guys are gonna go into hiding. Like this is the first clue. I thought I was like, first when I opened, I said, I thought the 3-Man Weave got sent. I was like, this is a weird logo to have, like with that X across your. So if anyone knows or wants to claim it, it would help me. Help the guys 3-Man Weave sleep a little easier at night. But let's get into if you have futures, what your futures are, and then also you can, for people that aren't familiar with any of us who are tuning in for the first time, we can kind of give a little bit of background of who your teams are from just a fan perspective as well. I'll start. I'm originally from right outside of Philadelphia. I went to school at GW. Don't care about GW's basketball team. There's zero school spirit. I was there, and Pops was there, by the way. That was like probably their best team, but no school spirit there. It was sad sports fun. No football team. That's really what does it. But grew up without. I didn't have a team. I just always loved players, and then since I started betting college basketball since high school, 20 years now. I'm going on 20 years. It's whoever I had a future on was my team. Then I moved, married a Kentucky girl. She went to Kentucky. I moved to Lexington, so I'm kind of a Kentucky fan, adopted Kentucky fan. I don't. It's not like I'm, live and die like people that were born here, but I root for them. Obviously, it's good for my wife and her bar. Shout out to Stagger Inn if you're ever down in Lexington. I'll buy you a drink. But so I'm an adopted Kentucky fan. But this year, my team is TCU. I bought a future on them way back, and I rarely do this, but I thought I was kind of taking a stab that Miles and Ball would come back. And this is a team, they're going to be, we just talked about the Big 12. They're going to be tested throughout. And number one, I love their coach. They're going to be, Mike, you mentioned this, like, who can you trust to get to the second weekend? Now, they can't shoot, but that's like, they're not a team that's like, oh, they're off from three. They can get upset. Number one, this is a team that is elite in transition. I mean, they look like an NBA team in transition. They will get out on the boards, and then who cares if they're missing their threes? One of the best, if not the best, offensive rebounding team in the country. And they have a guard in Miles who can take over a game. Like, I have 3 minutes, tight game. I need a guard to go down and just get me a bucket. That's Miles. So I love this team. Experienced, rebounding, defense, athletic, transition buckets galore. I think they're a legit Final Four threat. Might go a little under the radar. And if you don't, I have 80-1, and they've been on, they blew out Kansas State. In the Big 12, though, I think you want to wait, because teams you're going to lose 2 to 3 in a row in this conference. So it's a wait to see, at a low point, if you want to get in. But I believe in TCU. Mike, let me kick it to you. Where you're from, and who are your futures, if you have any, or targeting?
So also from the Philly area, grew up in the Overbrook, Marion Station spot. So I was always a diehard St. Joe's fan. And, if they win today, as of recording at this point, it looks like they're pretty good against LaSalle. You got to play that Lou Brown from Major League quote. It's like, you win today and you win tomorrow. That's called a winning streak. So it'd be nice to see them win 3 in a row in the A10 for the first time in a minute. But obviously postseason's not in their future. I went to Loyola, Maryland, talk about no school spirit for a program. Basketball, one of the worst home court advantages in all of college hoops. Although when I was there, they paid a North Baltimore high school band to come in and play the music, and they had a lot of spirit. So that was pretty
Amazing.
fun. That was about as good as we got in terms of firing up the crowd, all 250 of us. But, for college basketball, very similar for me. I like to hitch my wagon to the teams and players I fall in love with. You throw in these futures plays, and all of a sudden you have interest throughout the entire season. I'll just mention the 2 tickets that I'm the most excited for. I got a good number on Houston, at least in my opinion. I got them at 11-1. I still think they're the safest bet to at least get to the Sweet 16. So there's some opportunities for them depending on their path. I think it's matchup dependent for them to go to the Final Four, but I feel pretty good about that. And recently, I just bought back in on Creighton. Creighton was a very polarizing team because of what they've done, early in the season and dropping games and opportunities in that losing streak. But I got them at 70-1. So at this point, I'm going to touch on it for their game on Tuesday night against Butler. I think if they can finally prove they can win outside of Omaha, this is a team that has the inside-outside mix with Shireman and Kalkbrenner to finally put it together. Will they do it? I don't know, but at 70-1, I think it's worth the proposition. So those are the 2 I'm most excited about. I got a Houston ticket. I got a good number at 45-1, but I think it's dead without Nick Smith Jr., as we touched on earlier. But at least according to his father or his family camp, he's going to try to give it a go to fire it back up. But I think even at this point, his knee has been so problematic that if he's able to play, is it more than a game or 2? And realistically, I'm sure there's people in his ear saying, just shut it down and be a lottery pick next summer.
Yeah, love the Creighton pick. If this is NFL still going on, if there was like an MVP like Kalkbrenner, I mean, how important is he to everything that Creighton wants to do? And with him in the lineup, it is a completely different team as we've seen. I mean, you saw them without him. It was tough. They had just no one to defend the rim and no one to go to inside. That is they're for real when fully healthy, which they are right now. BJ, I think most know that you're, and we're going to talk about the Big Ten, an Iowa guy from Iowa.
Yep.
I don't know if you have an Iowa future, but what futures do you have, or are you eyeing?
I mean, it's funny you say that. So yes, I was born 20 minutes outside of Iowa City, and eventually I moved to the Des Moines area. I've never lived anywhere outside of Iowa except for a summer in London. That's the only time I've ever actually gone anywhere outside of this wonderful state. But yes, I've actually bought back in at Iowa at 100-1. They've gone through a little bit of a tough stretch in the non-conference. Obviously, the loss to Eastern Illinois hurt quite a bit. Chris Murray didn't play in that game, but Chris Murray, he's just every bit as good as Keegan Murray was. Like his ability, his scoring ability, he's the number 1 player in shot quality in terms of taking high quality shots. Patrick McCaffrey has taken a little bit of time away. Hopefully he gets better, but Peyton Sanford's now shooting the ball really, really well. And Iowa is due for a little bit of positive regression defensively. Obviously, they're outside the top 100 in Ken Pom in defensive efficiency, but they are top 40 in shot quality. So I think at 100-1 in a Big Ten, which we're going to touch on a little bit, where Purdue has looked pretty vulnerable, and then who's the next team outside of Purdue that could potentially overtake them? Iowa is a team that I think could potentially do that. And I don't know about you, Stuck, but I would rather have Iowa struggle during the regular season and get hot during March Madness rather than what happened last season to both Iowa and Kentucky. So, yeah, and to back up off you, Mike, I also have bought back in on Creighton, a little bit of a worse number at 50-1, but this is a top 20 Ken Pom team, top 10 shot quality team. They've actually have the number 1 strength of schedule in the country right now. Just highlights how difficult of a stretch they've gone through. And they are not going to be a 2 or a 3 seed. They're going to be a very, very dangerous 4 or 5. And the biggest thing with betting college basketball futures is you have to ask yourself, okay, is this team going to be this number by the time we reach March? And I don't think we're going to be seeing Creighton at 50-1, at potentially a 5 or a 6 seed. So yes, I'm back in with Creighton. Like you guys already mentioned, Kalkbrenner is just so huge for them. But I mean, Baylor Scheierman's one of the best shooters in the entire country, which we saw.
Yeah, I have if you look at, I have Creighton right now as a top 10 team in my power ratings. Now it's kind of like in the NFL, there's if you have the top teams and then there's like a mush. It's not like there's a huge difference between 10 and 18, but yeah, 50-1 on Creighton. What did you have, Mike? 71. That's 70-1 value. Yeah. That team's going to be a tough out. They can score. The thing I worry about is with Iowa is, we'll talk about this with futures, just rule of thumb. Like you want to add up, just if you go to Ken Pom, add up your offensive and defensive efficiency. If if they add up to more than 50, it's tough. And then that's going to be the question with Iowa. Can they get that defense down to, a more respectable level, which will be the questions. I guess let's just transition into the Big Ten now, since we're talking about Iowa. I think so. I'll talk high. And by the way, Mike, I actually went to St. Joe's for grad school. My dad is an alum, diehard St. Joe's fan. I've told this story before, but I called him I bet on Oklahoma State in I think it was the Final Four, Elite Eight, when John Lucas hit that shot. I was a drunk college kid. It was at ESPN Zone in Washington, D.C. I called him and as a drunk asshole college kid, and I was like, and he hung up on me. Didn't talk to me for 3 weeks. I was like, am I ever going to talk to my dad again?
It was one of my best young journalistic opportunities. I got to interview Phil Martelli the next year and have like a sit down for an alumni magazine. And I just asked him at the end, I was like, it was obviously painful for me as a St. Joe's fan. Would you have changed anything at all at the end of that game? And he's like, to be honest, we played a really good game. They played a better game. And the last possession, I got the ball in Jameer's hands, and we're going to always roll the dice. The only thing he said is he preferred he shoot a 3 as opposed to a 2 at the end of the game. That's it. So even though it was painful because it was a once in a lifetime opportunity to make the Final Four, it's not as though they choked that game or they played really poorly on a big stage. And the fact that we got to knock off Chris Paul and Wake Forest in the previous round, I think really stuck it to Billy Packer, because he was just railing against us the whole time. St. Joe's doesn't deserve the number 1 seed.
My dad still hates Billy Packer for that. And I'd still feel bad because it is, you say a once in a lifetime, that is a once in a like St. Joe's, a once in a program opportunity to get that far and then have it go in heartbreaking fashion. But anyway, back to the Big Ten. I'll go team I'm selling. And hopefully I'll probably sound like an idiot because we're recording this at halftime. I'm selling Purdue. Look, Matt Painter is a hell of a coach. They run great stuff. Zach Edey's just a matchup nightmare because he's so tall, but I think he's ultimately soft. And look at their surrounding pieces. Like, you're going to collapse, and then they run great stuff. They're going to get open threes, but they're playing like starting like 2-3 stars. And every time they play someone's out or someone's hurt. They get that call at Nebraska. They get the turnover by Ohio State after Key is hurt. I think this team's running really well from a luck perspective, and I think they are at the peak of their value. I'm looking to sell them as much as I can in the near future, including today. So after they win this game by 15, and you hear this, yes, I'm an idiot. And then the team I'm buying, and I'm going to buy a future on them, is Ohio State. I do think, look, they had when Key went down, he's huge for their offensive rebounding, but I love their coach. I love the stuff that they run on offense, and they're not too 3-point reliant, and they can get a lot of boards. They need someone, I think that like Sensabaugh can be that guy that just ends up being the go-to guy. That's really what they're missing, I think, a little bit. Like they don't have a Miles, right? Like I need a bucket at the end of the game. But I think Ohio State now is the time to buy them. You can find 90 to 1, I think, on FanDuel. I will be betting a future on them today. I'll put it in the app after you guys listen to this. It'll probably already be in there. But I think that this is the time to buy them. Like they could have easily beat Purdue, even with Key going down. They should have won at Rutgers. It goes to overtime. They basically led the entire game. Fluky end. But love the coach. Love the stuff they run. And I think that they, in a year where there's no elite team, I think that's a team that can be going like this at the time the tournament comes. And I think this is the time to buy Ohio State. So Ohio State is going to be my second future ad. Let me throw it to you, BJ. And just, you mentioned Iowa. Is there other teams in the conference buying, selling? There's a lot of injury concerns, right? Like Indiana is just not the same team without Xavier Johnson. Race Thompson is not there. What are you eyeing in the Big Ten that is worthy of bringing up here?
I'm actually going to be buying, and not necessarily from a futures perspective, but just like a team that I think is going to be a great underdog as we go forward in the Big Ten season is Northwestern. They're currently sitting at 12-5. Their 5 losses have come against Auburn, Pitt, Rutgers, Ohio State, and Michigan. And for whatever reason, they just cannot hit a shot to save their life. They're 335th in effective field goal percentage, but they're a top 50 spacing team. They're a top 5 shot selection team, and they're top 25 in turnover percentage allowed. So that's what I look for is teams that are not going to turn the ball over. They're getting good shots, and eventually some of those shots are actually going to fall down. Plus, they are a top 15 Ken Pom team. They're 3rd in 2-point field goal percentage allowed. They're top 30 in turnover percentage. Like, they are going to be a very, very good underdog as they face some of these teams like Purdue, like Ohio State, where they're going to be 6-7 point underdogs. They're playing Iowa tomorrow. So that's going to be a little bit of a difficult situation. But as we go forward in the season, as we go forward in the season, I think that Northwestern is definitely going to be an underdog to buy. Plus, they've got a ton of experience. Like they have 3 seniors and 2 juniors, and they're starting 5. So I think that this Northwestern team could potentially make a run. Probably not win the Big Ten, but definitely make some noise as we go throughout the rest of the season.
Yep, don't mind that at all. Mike, what are you seeing in the Big Ten, either from buy or sell perspective or just an overall theme?
Well, just to react to both of your points, can Fletcher Lawyer keep shooting like this for Purdue? Because coming into this game against Michigan State, he was 15 for 30 from 3-point range in Big Ten play. They were up to almost 9 made threes per game in conference play. That once they shoot like that from the perimeter, you can't beat Purdue. But I just don't see that as a long-term solution for them to be able to balance out their offense. And yes, Painter is a great regular season coach, but I need to see it in the postseason with basically, I mean, he's had this kind of architecture for his team before around a dominant big and not been able to get it done. So I'm not in a position to be buying on the Boilermakers. I will bring up something interesting from
Painter gets a pass, by the way, because Kentucky lost to St. Peter's. So people think so no one gives Purdue shit for losing to St. Peter's. In the spot of all spots, like they just beat Kentucky. How do you lose them? But they no one will ever remember that because Kentucky lost to St. Peter's, and rightfully so. But go ahead, I'm sorry. I digress.
And a shout out to BJ. One of my favorite college football trips. I go on a big trip every year. I've been to like 45 major campuses for games. Iowa City, very underrated. Had a great time.
Best college
Vine
football
Tavern for
experience
wings.
in
Vine
the
Tavern messed
country.
me up. It was phenomenal. So I had a great time there. Great atmosphere, waving to the kids, all that good stuff. I'll also put on the fact that I play college fantasy basketball, which means that there's 6 or 7 guys that I'm laser focused on a weekly basis. And I have Chris Murray on my team. And because I'm watching their games so closely, I've been keeping an eye on Peyton Sandfort and what he's meant to them in the last month. Because this is a guy at the beginning of the year, he's barely playing off the bench. He was averaging 7 points per game in their first 10. Last 4, 18 points per game. And that performance with Murray going to the bench early on Sunday against Maryland, and they still blew out the Terrapins. I think that's a good sign for them moving forward, that they don't need him to don the Superman cape to win games in conference going away. So I'm kind of bullish on where Iowa is, but I put him in the same bucket as a lot of those home and away split teams that I've discussed before. Like, I want to see it away from Iowa City and put together some good performances, even if they don't necessarily win, but just like, do not lay an egg on the road, because that's what always concerns me with McCaffrey's teams. Finally, for me, the team that if you want to go on a roller coaster ride, why not buckle into the Fighting Illini? Because when you look at their ceiling this year, they beat Texas. They beat that UCLA win keeps getting better and better. Underwood blasts the whole team. It looks like they got a mutiny on their hands. And now all of a sudden, Terrence Shannon Jr., who I was worried would just, kind of check out mentally, he's been playing really, really well. And I think this now puts them in a ceiling to be in the top 3 in the Big Ten. But also if everything goes wrong, they could be a bottom 4 team. So from a high volatility standpoint, I like the Fighting Illini, at least to play them until this hot streak wanes a little bit, because with him playing as well as he is, it's not just scoring the basketball, he's a stat sheet stuffer. So he means so much to their team. Illinois is a team that, as of right now, it's a buy for me, which I say with trepidation, because we all know how crazy they've been this season.
Yeah, tough team to crack. But I don't know why I just thought of this, but keep in mind, teams, when you're like every market's getting more efficient by the day. If you're betting a favorite in college basketball now, you're laying somewhere between 2 and 6, and you have a guy, take a look at the team, and you have a guy at the end of the game that is automatic from the line. That's going to just, I can't even tell you how many covers that's going to decide. I think I've lost or pushed 3 bets fading Xavier, because Boom never misses a free throw. And then like a guy like Sir Jabari Rice of Texas, he's like 90%. They just get him the ball, he will make every free throw down the stretch. I don't know why I just thought of that, but keep that in mind. But yeah, Big Ten, I agree with that. All the thoughts here. Purdue is down 3 right now. Even if they lose this game, I still think that they're going to be overvalued.
They're minus 120 right now to win the Big Ten.
Yeah, I joke. They've gotten every bounce. And by the way, you think I know, Mike, you went to Iowa for the game, but I would argue that Ames is a better experience.
Shut up.
All right. Let's move on to
Des Moines, a hell of a city too.
Shout out Drake.
Yeah,
they were the MVC favorites.
They got that nice skywalk when it's like negative 15 degrees.
Hey,
so you don't even have to go outside.
The Knapp Center gets rocking when Drake's playing good, man.
Big win for Drake this weekend. And we talked about home road splits. Take a look at Bradley. There is no team they are Jekyll and Hyde. At home, they are a monster. On the road, they are awful. I think shout out to Hazelmetrics, and I forget, I think it's Hazelmetrics who has the away from home metric, and they are dead last in the country, which just it's a metric that basically shows the dichotomy between your performance at home and the road. Anyway, until further notice, do not bet Bradley on the road, only fade them. All right, let's move on to Tuesday night. Before we get to our best bet, lines aren't out yet, but we can kind of project where they'll be, and or maybe they are. The lines out yet for tomorrow? Let's take a look. Might be some openers out.
Hang on, let me pull up the award-winning Action Network app.
Yeah,
here.
a great time for the plug. Yeah, it looks like there's some openers out there. Okay, so let's, before we get to a bet or two, if you want to mention a couple, no harm there. But let's talk Kansas State. Kansas looks like on the open, 2.5 point favorite at Kansas State. I'm a little worried about the Kansas State defense, especially in transition. One of the reasons why I love TCU against them. They really struggle there, but this is the spot of spots for Kansas State. I mean, they're coming off a game where they got crushed. Kansas is like, they're winning, but they're winning by 2, 4, 3. Can we trust the Kansas State defense enough in a slam home spot here? Because everything that I know and in my gut is telling me this is a Kansas State or nothing bet. BJ, let me throw it to you. What do you see here?
Yeah, I'm with you. This is Kansas State or nothing. Kansas, like I already mentioned off the top, they're 5-0 in the Big 12 with 4 wins by 4 points or less. Like, they're due for some negative aggression defensively, especially at the rim, which Kansas State does get to the rim at a top 20 rate in the country. And they are also 8th in shot selection. And they're very, very good in transition, where Kansas is outside the top 100 as well. So Kansas State offensively should be able to thrive here. The thing that worries me, though, Stuck, and, I don't typically look into past performances because obviously teams change from year to year, but Kansas has won 15 of the last 16 in this rivalry, which, obviously that will be on the minds of Kansas State. But again, I agree with you. Can Kansas State get enough stops to win this game? They didn't look that great against TCU over the weekend. It was obviously a terrible spot for them coming off 100-point performance against Texas and a couple other wins.
TCU off 2 tough losses.
It was just a terrible
spot for TCU.
Yep, terrible spot. But yeah, this is a slam spot here for Kansas State. 2.5.
Would love to get 3. It's a little juice on an open.
I have it here. I literally have it here in my notes. I was like, if Kansas State gets to 3.5 or 4, I'm there.
Oh,
but
at
2.5,
3,
it's hard.
Yeah, I think Kansas in a way is like the team. Now they're getting away with it, but they're like, they know how good they are.
To be able to do that.
Yeah, like they know how good they are, so they're kind of like, they're not as focused as they probably will be come March, and stuff will have them. So they're just ripe to get picked off here, and it's not even going to derail their. Yeah, okay, they lost to Kansas State. This team's going to be there in the end. I think this is the spot that they're just going to get picked off. Do you disagree, Mike? What do you see here in this matchup?
I mean, there's lots to like with K-State. They share the ball incredibly well. They're 6th nationally in assist to made bucket percentage in the whole country. My concern here is that they get worked on the offensive glass. They're 240th in terms of giving up offensive boards. And here comes Jalen Wilson, double-double in 2 of his last 3 games. Keontae Johnson, it's critical that he plays well in this game. And you've seen what's happened lately for him. He's had a lot of turnovers, 17 turnovers in his last 4 games for a guy that shouldn't be in turnover-worthy situations all that often. So I think if Wilson really dominates him, then all the pressure slides over to their Arkansas Little Rock transfer. Marquise Knoll has been phenomenal.
Amazing.
And when he scored 17 plus this year, they're 6-0. When you look at games where he scored less than that, that's 2 of their blowout losses to Butler by double digits on the road, one of those. So I don't know. I think I agree with your assessment from both of you guys, where if you're going to play it on the money line. K-State gets this win. Otherwise, it's a pass, because I just don't see Kansas doing enough right now at a really high level to justify them winning comfortably by 7-8 points, which is where you want to be in a spot laying points like this. So yeah, I think it's a pass for me, but I'm intrigued by what K-State's been able to do and all the holes they've been able to plug in the transfer portal.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think it's Kansas State's spot, or nothing 3 would be lovely. And another plug, make sure you follow along on the award-winning Action Network app to see what we do end up betting for tomorrow. Speaking of tomorrow's slate, let's call out a spot or two for what you have as your favorite bet, I guess, as of now. There are openers out there. I'm going to start. We just talked about the loaded Big 12. Texas Tech is winless. They lost by 6 at TCU, lost by 3 at home to Kansas, lost in overtime to Oklahoma, then got destroyed by Iowa State, lead the whole game at Texas in a great effort, lose by 2. Now they're at home against Baylor in an absolute slam spot. I think they're going to be a 1-point favorite here. They're also a different team now that AMAC has returned. Him in the middle just makes them much more dynamic from multiple perspectives, and I think that their defense here can slow down Baylor. You get a great crowd here. This is a Texas Tech slam spot here. I think they get their first win over a Baylor team that's just not right now. I know that, they've won 2 straight. They looked okay against Oklahoma State. They won at West Virginia, but they're still searching for that interior play. They just haven't been that impressive. I love what I saw from Texas Tech over the weekend. I think they get this win here. I think it's a great spot to back them at -1 or on the money line.
I think Baylor certainly needed Flagler to play at an All-American level for them to achieve, their preseason goals. And even though, as you pointed out, they won those last 2, he's not taken those games over. And he should have been a good enough 3-point shooter coming into the year to be able to have those games where he cans 4 or 5 trays and really takes over, but that hasn't materialized. So I agree with you, despite their overall talent level. At this point in the season, there's enough of a body of work to say, like, is this their ceiling? And they're just not going to get any better.
Yep. Yeah. For those not familiar, AMAC is the Utah Valley transfer, 6'11" kid. I think he had 12 or 14 against Texas. He just changes that entire team. He didn't play. This weekend was the first game that he played this year. BJ, let me go to you. Any thoughts there or any other game that you have circled?
Yeah, I'm going to go to the SEC, and I'm going to take Mississippi State. Ken Palm has us at 6.
Can they score? Can they
score? That's the
score?
question, Stuck, because the last time these two teams played, which was about 2 weeks ago, Tennessee opened on a 16-0 run and beat them by 34. They went 77% from the floor and 12 of 21 from behind the arc. And I think what you saw against Saturday against Kentucky is that shooting regression is going to come eventually for Tennessee. It actually obviously happened on Saturday, but Mississippi State in that game against Tennessee, only 2 of those 22 or 21 3-pointers were considered open 3-point shots. In fact, Mississippi State actually won the game, the shot quality game, which is kind of astonishing considering they lost by 34. But it's a team that's just due for a lot of positive regression. They're 1-4 in the SEC right now. They won every single game by shot quality. Even against Auburn on Saturday, Mississippi State went 0 for 18 from behind the 3-point line. Now they're only shooting a little over 28% from on the season. And I understand that Kentucky's the number 1 defensive team on Ken Palm, but Mississippi State cannot continue to shoot this bad from the floor. I mean, there's a little over 61% from the free throw line. Like, that's one of the worst marks in the country. And Tennessee, I mean, they're just really not that great of an offensive team. And that was just on display Saturday against Kentucky. Like, they're only shooting a little over 33% from behind the arc.
They turn it over too much.
They turn over a ton. Plus, Mississippi State, a top 10 turnover team defensively. So Mississippi State also top 10 in defensive efficiency as well. So this is just one of those classic, like, everybody's going to say, oh my gosh, they just completely blew the doors off them last time. Of course, I'm going to take Tennessee. So
I love these spots too, when you're like the highly ranked team lost, and then everyone thinks that they're going to bounce back on the road, and you usually can snag a little bit of value there. So I don't hate it. Yeah. Tennessee's opponents are shooting 21.3% from 3. The single season record, I think Norfolk State has it at 25.3%.
Oh my gosh.
They're at 21. Like, this isn't some defense that we've never, they're great defense, but it's not some defense that we've never seen before that teams are going to shoot 20% from 3. So yeah, there's some regression coming Tennessee's way. And they get away with a lot of stuff on the defensive end, very crafty, grab and hold, and they take charges. And Mississippi State might get some calls here as well. I agree. It's a great spot for Mississippi State. Mike, what do you got?
I'm going to try to buy myself some time. If anyone can look up the Creighton Butler opener or projection, also throw out if you listen to this in time,
Creighton 6, Creighton -6 at Butler.
-6. Okay. One other game, in case you listen to this in time, that I love this week. This happens to fall on a Monday night, but Rice is laying 6.5 at UTSA. Rice is a really good road team. And I talked about it off the top that those are the teams I'm trying to identify at this point in the season. They've won 3 or 4 straight up. They almost beat Texas at the Moody Center. That game went to OT, and Max Fielder is just dominating the competition right now. UTSA is horrid defensively. They're going to get crushed. They're almost 300th in defensive rebounding percentage. So I love that, paired with the fact that the Roadrunners are the bottom of Conference USA in turnover margin. Lots of extra opportunities for the Owls in that game. 6, I'm still going to roll the dice on Creighton. I think they're going to get hot at this point in the season. You look at what they did in their last game, 60 points out of the trio of Kalkbrenner, Shireman, and Trey Alexander. That's the offensive engine. If that can travel, I think they're good enough to win the Big East tournament, come March. And I think they're going to put it together. And this is an opportunity to show it against a Butler team that I think is going to be outgunned in this particular game. So I'll lay the 6. I was hoping it'd be a little bit closer to 5. I'll probably play it up to 7. But the Blue Jays at this point in the season, I think the stink of that 4 to 5 game losing streak is now finally off of them, and it's going to take a little bit for the public to catch up. But a game like this, say they had won 1 or 2.
No Manny Bates too for Butler. I
know that is absolutely huge, and that
they had their one game without him bump, I think, and then now it's the second game, but that's massive.
Just defensively, it's going to require them to put extra attention on Kalkbrenner. I think it's going to result in a lot of open looks on the perimeter for the Blue Jays in this game. So going to go ahead and slam Creighton in this spot. And I think this is going to be the best number you're going to get them for a little bit. So might as well take advantage at this point.
By the way, speaking of Rice, I'm going to bring this up because I want someone, maybe you guys, if I forget, if Rice plays UTEP in the conference tournament, we are betting UTEP.
Why's that?
If you didn't see over the weekend, so Rice won at UTEP, I think a week and a half ago in overtime, and then they won at the buzzer at home on a crazy, it was an amazing shot, like basically behind the backboard at the bell. Their coach, Scott Pera, he went, but I've never seen it. He went bananas. He went like to the crowd.
He did not act like he had been there before. That was.
I was sending people this video. They were like, that's not the coach. They thought it was like an alumni or like a booster. And then, so UTEP refused. They were like, we're not shaking. What are you doing? Not shaking hands. And he is then like clapping at them, like waving bye to them. Oh man. So I don't know, but UTEP is waiting for their second shot. They probably should have beat them twice, lost both times. But the way that Rice handled that game, man, I don't know. UTEP, if UTEP gets a shot at them again, it's gonna be hard not to bet them. Just wanted to bring that up. But good stuff there. Follow along on the Action Network app, as always, and actionnetwork.com. We have write-ups and previews every day. The team does an incredible job. That's going to do it for us. By the way, if you leave a review, they really help us out. But a lot of people left some great reviews during the football season for Big Bets on Campus. Leave a review. They really help us out. But we have some giveaways our producer will shout out now. But that'll do it for us. Feels good to talk college basketball again. It's just the start of it. We'll have 3-man weave midweek. We'll have myself, BJ, and Mike back on Friday, and that'll be Monday, Wednesday, Friday throughout the rest of the season. We'll have some guests on. We'll build a futures portfolio, preview the weekend throughout. So it'll be a lot of fun. Appreciate everyone listening. Good stuff, guys. Thanks to our audio and video team on the back end. As always, tell a friend, tell an enemy, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe. Thanks to our sponsor, BetMGM. That'll do it for us. Let's go find some winners, and we'll catch y'all later. Cheers.